All right, we're on the next episode of Blood Money. Today we have a very special guest, Chris Sky. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. How are you, brother?
Good, good. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna, say a few flattering things about you. I think people like you are really the superstars of today because what I saw when the whole COVID thing hit, there was a few people that were very vocal, and I remember early on. I started seeing videos where you're calling the bullshit, you're attacking Justin Trudeau, you're attacking the Marxism that's basically, it seems like it's taken over Canada. And unlike what we consider celebrities today, like you're actually doing something with your voice, taking chances, and really fighting against the tyranny. So, could you tell us about what you've been doing this last 3 years?
Well, no problem. It all started actually in February 2020. My wife and I were on vacation for her birthday, February 27th. We landed in Venice, which turned out to be the exact day and time that they declared Venice the epicenter of the COVID outbreak for the Western world.
Wow.
And they canceled Carnival, which is the biggest festival in Venice that's been going on for hundreds of years. And it was on my wife's bucket list, I guess you could say. So we got there, and boom, we got thrust right into the thick of things. But right away, the information on the TV and the information from public officials was not the same as the information on the ground. They were painting such a drastic picture on TV. I was getting nonstop calls from people in Canada saying, "Oh my God, are you okay? I know you're in Venice. There's a pandemic." Meanwhile, my wife and I were just having a normal vacation. I was at the gym overlooking the canal, and my wife's shopping at Gucci. Like, we're having a good time. So already I knew that there was something off. And when I started seeing all these other countries getting ready to do the lockdowns, we got firsthand view of that because we ended up leaving Venice right before it got locked down, and we left Italy 3 days before Italy got locked down. And we spent a couple of days in Netherlands and France, so we got to see how Europe was handling the pandemic right before we got back, March 2nd, I believe it was, into Canada. And then we tried to warn everybody they're going to try to lock us down over here. Obviously, nobody listened. Then we got locked down. Then everybody was terrified for a few weeks, didn't do absolutely anything. And then we decided we needed to speak out against this. And my wife showed me a flyer for a protest that was at Queen's Park. Never been to a protest in my life. I'm not political. I've never even voted in my life. I've worked in the private industry. I was like 13 years old. So,
and before this, by the way, before February 2020, you weren't politically active, or were you doing anything?
Absolutely not. Like I just said, I'd never voted in my life. I despise politicians. I despise the whole political party thing because they give you a choice of the lesser of two evils. That's like me giving you a choice for lunch between a shit sandwich and a dick sandwich. And
you could have the cobra or you could have the python,
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I just refuse to eat shit. Well, the rest of the population sees the thing otherwise. But in reality, if you look at it, people make fun of people like me. They call us the non-voter. But in reality, there's more non-voters and people that don't vote than there are that vote for every political party combined. So what does that tell you? It tells you certain members of the population are susceptible to government propaganda and trust the government and politicians because they're stupid. And then a certain segment of the population, a bigger segment of the population, knows they're completely full of shit, knows they're not to be trusted, and doesn't want anything to do with them. That's the reality of COVID as well. So when they try to tell you there's 80% of the people that wanted the jab or 90% of the people, no. The vast majority of people don't believe in the government, don't trust the government. They went along with it because they were coerced either through fines, arrest, losing their job, social status, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, before this, I was in residential develop, design, and build. My company is called Sky Homes Corporation, which is where the name Chris Sky comes from. It's not a stage name that just manifested at COVID. Like people try to pretend like I'm some government agent or some controlled opposition because my name, people call me Chris Sky. People have been calling me Chris Sky since I was 15 years old. And I'm 39 now, so I think after 24 years, it's okay, guys. I think you can understand I'm a real person. But long story short, I went to the protest. It was all like disorganized, didn't know what the hell was going on. The mainstream media showed up, which is rare because they don't want to even cover these protests. They only showed up because they can make it look like what Trudeau wants to call a fringe minority at this point. And CBC was there, and they were filming all these weird-looking people with weird signs, weird haircuts to try to make us look as bad as possible. So I got pissed. I grabbed the camera, I put it on me, and I gave them a piece of my mind. I just ranted. But everybody around me heard it, and they're like, "Wow, you're really good. You should speak at the protest." I was like, "Speak at the protest? No, thank you. I don't want any of this. I don't want any of the problems. I don't want any of the attention. I don't want them coming after my company. I said everything that every single person says when they made an excuse for why they wore a mask, or made an excuse for why they took the jab, or made an excuse for why they complied in general. I made all those same excuses. I'm not going to lie, right on the spot. But then my wife gave me a guilt trip. She looked at me and said, you have the ability to speak out. You have the ability to do something. So if you don't do anything, everything that happens is going to be your fault. So,
wow. I got to pause you right there, man. That is a good woman, bro, because most of the people that I know that were speaking out, they were getting hell from their wives because,
I know,
it makes them
because the wives, for the most wives, their social status and their financial situation was more important. My wife happens to be a golden goddess inside and out. So she has morals, and she put me on that guilt trip. And let's be honest, I probably would have ended up speaking out eventually anyway, but she put a fire under my ass right at the beginning of this, and we came out of the gate running. So I started trying to do anything I could to help people. So the first things I did was make 2 separate nonprofits, one for businesses called Back to Work, to try to teach people how to stay open and how to not close their business down, even when the government forced them to. And then I made another one called Mothers Against Distancing. And this was a play on Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Obviously, they even tried to sue me because our logos were similar. But the idea here was to get mothers aware. And why mothers? Get mothers aware that the whole idea of all the restrictions and stuff in the schools was not in the best interest in the health and safety of their children. And it was, in fact, psychological trauma and torture on a grand scale over a prolonged period that was going to have drastic psychological and physiological negative impacts on their child's development and ultimately their child's success level. If their child had the potential to be up here, after 2.5 years of pandemic restrictions, they're going to be somewhere down here. And they're going to be trained to be afraid for the rest of their life.
Which is a crime against humanity, by the way.
100%.
It's crime against humanity on every level, and these prosecutors are cowards. We're going to get these people, but it's going to take time.
A million percent. And so I came up with this idea that the only way we're going to be able to beat these people is because everything comes down to compliance. So you got to teach people how to, this is my slogan, just say no. You can't even read it. I started a campaign. I stole it straight from Nancy Reagan, and I did it for a reason. We've all been programmed with that in our brains, just like every other propaganda since we were children. Just say no. So I knew it would resonate with people, especially for something they didn't want to do. So it became synonymous with just say no to the mask, just say no to the jab, just say no to the restrictions. And the next step was to make people aware. Make people aware, like I was just telling you about how the damage was going to be to their children. Make people aware that all these restrictions were going to have damage to the economy, to the people's mental health, etc. Make people aware that the government's doing this ultimately for power and control, not for your health and safety. That was the big one. If you can spread the awareness, that's phase 1. So we came up with the solution based off of just say no, and we call it united non-compliance. I coined that term in like April 2020, and basically what it means is getting everybody under the same umbrella, and that umbrella is freedom, regardless of the ways they try to divide us racially, financially, social status.
That's all an intelligence operation.
100%.
If they don't divide us, we want their heads right now.
That's right. So the entire strategy I had was to first deprogram people of the government propaganda by letting them know that the government's not your friend, the government's not to be trusted, and this is about power and control. The second thing we needed to tell them was all you got to do is learn how to just say no. And when you get enough people together that just say no together, it's called united non-compliance. And the best example of that throughout this entire pandemic, or probably in the last 50 years even, was the trucker convoy in Canada. Everybody knows that is the reason why Canadians no longer had travel mandates, no longer had mask mandates, and for the vast majority, no longer had vaccine mandates. Because the people united, the people said, we're not going to put up with this, and that was that. So we broke down united non-compliance into 3 phases. Phase 1 was the global awakening, spreading the awareness and getting people to the idea that government is doing this for control. That was all 2020. That's what we did for all 2020. 2021, we switched into phase 2 of united non-compliance, and that was taking action. So I did world tours. I wrote books. I did shows like this. We created workshops for people. We created different groups to support the businesses, different groups to support the schools, everything we could to take action against this. And then when we got into 2022, we were in the middle of transition from phase 2 to phase 3 of United Noncompliance. And that's the one that you were just talking about. And that's holding these people accountable. Because if we don't hold them accountable and there's no consequences for their actions, number one, they can reinstitute the restrictions whenever they want. Number two, they can reinstitute the restrictions under other terms and other guises. And number three, the people are still in PTSD from everything that happened, regardless of how strong they are, how independent they were. Everybody now on the world has been traumatized, and we all have a different mindset than we did 3 years ago, even myself. And we need to come together, and we need to show people that when bad people do bad things happen to those bad people. And that's going to keep people in check. Because the biggest problem we have now is everybody thought they were free and clear as soon as they got to take the mask off and they got to travel a little freely. But the reality is the COVID pandemic was just a precursor to the technocratic control grid that they're trying to set up. And what do I mean by that? I mean the combination of the 15-minute city, the personal carbon allowance, followed by digital currency and digital identity, followed by a central bank digital currency. When you combine all those different layers of tyranny, and that's exactly what they are, and we can break down each one, you get a society that was formerly independent, had a government that worked for them, and had the ability to excel in life and accumulate wealth, accumulate status, and enjoy that, and even pass that on to their children. Under their new system, you will own nothing and be happy. Well, if you own nothing, that automatically tells you that you're not going to be able to accumulate any kind of wealth or any type of social status. So what's the point of living and working hard and owning a business and doing that if they will not let you get anywhere? The answer is that's the point.
That's the point, to degrade you, to destroy you.
They want you dependent. They want you completely dependent on them to survive, because then they no longer serve you, they rule you. And now they can keep you in a perpetual state of servitude, just like we experienced on the lockdowns forever. And the COVID was done for two reasons. Number one, to get us used to the idea of living on those lockdowns and living with restrictions. And no one would have ever agreed to it, because freedom is so important. Millions of people fought and died in world wars to preserve freedom. So they couldn't just come and say, we're taking away your freedom for your own good. There would be a war. So what did they do? The biggest psychological operation in history, where we were all trained like dogs for the last 3 years to not only not value our freedoms, but to view freedoms as selfish and dangerous, and to view people who advocate for freedom as the most dangerous people of society. And what did that do? That got everybody into this idea of collective responsibility. Which is straight out of Marxism. You got to wear your mask for the other person. You're responsible for that. So now, what's the next logical transition where they can continue all this, but forever? Because a pandemic could only last a couple of years, but a climate crisis can last for generations.
Wink.
So now they're going to transition us that we need to have the same collective responsibility attitude towards fighting climate change. And how do they want to fight climate change? They want to fight climate change by lowering the average person's so-called carbon footprint, which is a euphemism for your actual footprint, where you can go, what you can do, what you spend your money on, etc. So what do they want to do to you exactly? Well,
kill you. You're the carbon.
You are the carbon. That's right. You are the carbon they want to reduce. Now, how much do they want to reduce it by? They want to reduce it. They say the average person in North America goes through around 20 tons of CO2 per year. This is them tracking everywhere you go, everything you eat, the types of clothes you buy, everything. Okay? So they're saying the average American uses 20,000 kilograms or 20 tons of CO2 per year to live.
Wow.
They're now saying that in order to stave off the 1.5 degree rise in temperature that's going to kill us all, that the average global carbon output per year per person has to drop to 1.5 or 2 tons, 2,000 kilograms of CO2. So they want to eliminate your carbon footprint.
Which is Georgia. There, that's basically the Georgia Guidestone number, basically, right?
Basically, they want to reduce the population by 80%, or they want to reduce your activity by 800%. Now, how are they going to do that? Everyone's like, how are they going to make me? How are they going to get me to use less and do less and blah, blah, blah? That's ridiculous. You're so stupid. Well, first of all, how many of you watching this are on a fixed budget? 99% of you. And what have you noticed throughout the pandemic and even after the pandemic's now over? Inflation on virtually everything. Official numbers in the double digits. Meanwhile, your salary goes up maybe 1% a year. But if everything you need to live, food, clothing, shelter, gas, electricity, goes up by 10%, and we know it's going up by way more than that in reality each year, well, what's going to happen? You're going to be able to buy less and less. But if that's not going to stop you fast enough from doing all this stuff. So now the next big phase of their plan is called a personal carbon allowance. MasterCard already offers a climate credit card that gives you a climate number on every single purchase. And it gives you how many kilograms of CO2 that purchase was. Now, to give you an example of how this will work, every item in your grocery store, it already is on the vegan items. If you go and find kale packaged up, it'll have something like 0.2 kilograms per serving. And that's the CO2 rating, which means you can eat as much of it as you want till you friggin' die. You'll never go over it. So they want you to eat this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, if you go to the steak aisle, they don't have it on there yet. But if you go online and see what the labels are going to look like very soon, you're going to see something like 50 kilograms of CO2 per serving. So you're not going to want to eat that steak. You might eat steak once a month. So they're going to track every kilogram of CO2 you use. Even when you go to an Italian restaurant and order a pizza, I have sample menus that show you the carbon rating on that pizza. Oh, you put sausage on that pizza, that makes this a 2.5 kilogram per serving pizza. Everything. You go and buy a pair of jeans, and I buy a leather jacket, that leather jacket's going to have a higher carbon rating because it came from a cow. They're going to track everything. Oh, you took a car today? How many kilometers did you drive? What size engine did that car have? That's this much carbon. Oh, you took a flight. For all the people that love to travel and that took that shot so they could travel, you're never going to travel under this new scheme. Do you know how much an average flight costs of carbon emissions? For me to fly from here to Toronto, say Toronto to Amsterdam, which is about 6-7 hours, and back, so a total of 14 hours of travel, the average flight, and you can go to Google Flights right now, it not only will it let you arrange the flights by duration or arrange the flights by price, it now lets you arrange the flights by which one has the lowest carbon emissions.
Wow.
Because they want you to track every carbon emission you take. So how much carbon emissions do you think it takes for one person, for me, to fly from Toronto to Amsterdam and back on a commercial airliner? Take a guess.
Like 10,000 or something crazy?
500 kilograms. So half a ton of CO2.
Half a ton. Wow.
Now, remember, they want you to only use 2 tons of CO2 for the entire year. And now in 14 hours of plane travel, you used 25% of your yearly allowance, your yearly personal carbon allowance. So what happens if you go over? Surprise, it's a new form of tax. Guess how much carbon credits cost per ton? Al Gore in like 2008 started a money laundering scheme with large corporations telling them, okay, you have profits, you're going to be paying those profits as taxes. Rather than do that, make some more expenses. Buy these carbon credits, $30 per ton. Hang on to them, because pretty soon we're going to expand this scheme and force all the people in America and around the world to adopt it, not just the oil and gas sector. So hold on to these, and they're going to be worth a lot of money. So not only are you going to save money on your taxes, now you're going to get an asset that's going to be worth way more. And how much more? Well, Trudeau already told us in Canada that under his cap and trade scheme, by 2030, Agenda 2030, 1 ton of carbon credits is going to cost $170. So for every 1 ton you go over, you're going to get charged $170. So for the average person like me that travels quite a bit, we'd probably go about 30 tons over for the year. So that would equate to over $5,400 a year just in new carbon tax, not including the inflation on everything. And that's only me. I'm married. So I'm pretty sure my wife would also be doing the same things as me and flying to the same place as me. So now it becomes over $10,000 a year. If that's a family of 4, now it's going to become over $20,000 a year to live the same lifestyle you lived in 2023 as you did in 2030. And that's not including the extra cost of living. Well, considering the average American only makes $30,000 a year, having a family pay an extra $20,000 in taxes doesn't really work. So now combine the personal carbon allowance with the 15-minute city. What's a 15-minute city? Surprise, it's a prison. It's not a city. Because when they say a 15-minute city, they mean 15-minute walking distance.
Oh, wow.
For the post-car era. They don't want you to have a private automobile anymore. So when they say they're going to put you into a 15-minute city, that means 15 minutes walking distance in all directions to everything you will need. So how far can the average person walk in 15 minutes? Answer, about 1.5 kilometers. So they're giving you a square kilometer radius of about 5 kilometers for you to live, work, play, etc. And
I mean,
pardon?
There's shades of like concentration camps, slavery.
100%. It's not shades. It's friggin'. It's there.
The painting.
It's exactly what it's modeled after.
It's a masterpiece of slavery and tyranny. It's amazing. Wow.
Well, and if people think this is a conspiracy theory, in Canada, Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, Edmonton have already declared themselves 15-minute cities. Edmonton's already shown all the little, and this is the best part. Each one of your little 5 square kilometer radiuses, you know what they call them? Districts.
Districts. Oh,
just like the Hunger Games.
And so District 9. District 9.
To your district. Now, how are they going to confine you to your district? Well, Oxford, England already has 6 districts set up in their 15-minute city as an example for the rest of England to follow. So what do? They set up checkpoints with actual physical barricades and physical bollards between the districts. Then on top of that, in all the districts, they put less and less roads where you're allowed to drive a car. And the roads where you are allowed to drive a car, they call them ultra low emissions roads. So you can only drive an electric car. And if you drive a normal car on those roads, surprise, surprise, there's cameras everywhere in England, more cameras than anywhere else in the world besides China. So they will get your license plate and automatically charge you. As well, they now have cameras at the checkpoints of each district. So if you leave your district when you're not supposed to, surprise, surprise, you're going to get charged. Eventually, you'll get arrested. And that's how they're going to keep you in your district. Combine that with the personal carbon allowance. You will not be driving a car because you will not be able to afford it. The carbon taxes alone. Plus, you won't be able to drive it on the road. So you're going to either have a scooter, electric scooter, you're going to be walking, or you're going to be taking public transit. And if you're taking public transit, you're going to go to the grocery store, you're going to go by yourself. Because if you go with the whole family, you're all going to get charged your carbon tax. So it's another way to isolate people.
Alienate people,
and reduce your ability, not only to purchase, but reduce your ability to actually physically go everywhere. Toronto has their perfect example shown of how their 15-minute city is going to work. They have an entire towers of buildings lined up and all connected, spanning, guess how far? 1.5 kilometers.
Oh, wow.
3,000.
So that shows they've been planning this stuff because buildings don't go up overnight.
No, and it's not. This one's not going to go up overnight either. It's going to take years and years for them to even get the funding and everything to do it. But the fact that they're planning it and showing you what they're doing and their intention is scary. And in this building, in this living quarters, this is how it works. There's around 2,800 living quarters, and we can't even call them condos because the average condo there, they call them studios, is going to be 250 square feet for a single person, or 350 square feet for a double occupancy. And a 250 square foot prison cell is going to run you something around $350,000 Canadian when it is built. Now, this is the best part. You're building those 1.5 kilometers worth of buildings doesn't just where you live. You're more than likely going to work there. That's where going to be where your hairdresser is, your grocery store, your gym, your Starbucks, mostly where you shop for clothes. So 95% of your life is not only going to be within that building, in that 1.5 kilometers, it's going to be indoors in a building.
Wow.
And you're not going to just not leave your district most of your life. You're not even going to leave your friggin' building complex most of your life. That's going to be the average person's life in 2030 if they don't do anything. Now, combine the personal carbon allowance, the 15-minute city, and let's go to a digital identity. Now the government sees every single transaction you make so they can track your carbon rating on everything. Mm-hmm. They won't allow you to use cash at this point. So every single transaction you make is now tracked, traced, taxed, and must be approved by the government. Remember when they banned non-essential items? Now they can do that whenever they want. If they don't want you to eat meat, if you ate too much meat that month, your card's not going to work for meat. Wow. They have that kind of control. Now combine the digital identity with a digital currency. Now the government can turn off your wallet whenever they want, confiscate your money whenever they want. Or like China's doing, and this is the best part, they can make you be on a digital currency that then expires. So if you do not spend your money, the government will recoup it because you're hoarding in a time where resources are very valuable. So now they literally have you stuck in a system where you're a slave no matter what you do, no matter how hard you work, no matter how smart you are, no matter how driven you are, you will never get anywhere in life. You will be relegated to your district. You won't even be able to date people from the other district.
Yeah, and I mean, people need to really take heed with what, because you were out there on the front lines from the start before COVID even started the shutdowns here, right? And you predicted a whole bunch of stuff, like you said, nobody listened to you, and now you're predicting a whole bunch of other things that are really taking us down the road of slavery. And I hope people listen. Because they want your.
But they're not predictions. These are literally. This is literally what's happening now.
Yeah,
not what's going
what
to happen. Saying.
It's
happening now as we speak. You can go to Google and see the carbon credit price on each flight. You can see that they're trying to push for a personal carbon allowance. You can see they're already implementing 15-minute cities. You can see that they're implementing central bank digital currencies all over the world. In fact, 13 countries have already implemented them, and another 95 countries, which represent over 95% of the world's gross domestic product, are in development of central bank digital currencies, including Canada and the United States. So none of this is a conspiracy theory. None of this is happening far along where it's not going to affect you. This is all happening as we speak on the back of COVID to try to overwhelm you so you feel hopeless, so you feel despair. Because when you feel like that, it becomes an inevitability to you. So you won't fight back. It's a psychological operation. That's why every one of their propaganda networks is telling you that this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. In reality, it can only happen if you go along with it. You have to go sign up for that digital identity. You have to go allow them to track your carbon and say, I'm going to agree to a personal carbon allowance. You have to allow them to build that 15-minute city around you. And they know that. And that's why they're trying to make you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. Because in reality, we can do anything we want and they can't stop us. And that's what everybody needs to realize.
Yeah, what I find amazing is, you're wearing that cross there. And honestly, I see the work of God. I think we need to stop and appreciate the work of God for a moment here. And what I mean by that is that, man, you're a developer. You weren't even like politically involved. And you become a massive voice in this. And what I hear in the way you plan stuff, where you're talking about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, right? You're thinking on like a general patent, like war planner level. And,
it is war.
And you literally rose out of nowhere. Like you were not even on the scene before all this went down. And I don't know, I had to pause there and say, like, I see the tapestry of God in that, how people just rise from the shadows to basically defend our rights against all this tyranny. When really we should be, looking at leaders, quote unquote leaders. People like you have become leaders,
I don't want to say I'm a leader because that's how everybody does. Those always become points of division. But what I will say is I became someone that definitely leads by example. And if more
Mm-hmm.
people followed my example, especially men, we wouldn't be in this mess. And it's funny you mentioned the
Yeah.
work of God, because the first thing I did when this lockdown started was I hosted a nonprofit event with my back to work at a tattoo parlor that was shut down. But we opened them up and we brought a whole bunch of people there for a 1-day blitzkrieg so they could make enough money that they could stay open for months if need be. And that's where I got this tattoo of Archangel Michael right on my throat chakra to make sure I always spoke the truth from that day on.
Wow, that's powerful, man. Dude, let's talk about Justin Trudeau. I mean, I don't know, man. Just it's what obviously you think he's a tyrannical scumbag. I mean, what's going on there with
He is the perfect politician puppet. We know he's completely controlled by the World Economic Forum. We know he's completely stupid. We know he's completely immoral, including he had out of court settlements for having sex with underage people. His friggin' Justin Trudeau Foundation, the symbol on it was the literal FBI pedophile symbol. And he kept it all the way until 2021 when he got called out on it on a grand scale. So they finally changed it. He comes from Pierre Trudeau, who's got a very gross background. His mom was known as the biggest whore in the world. Margaret Trudeau is literally...
Didn't she recently say she wished she had screwed all the Rolling Stones?
Because you know what? She made the news twice, because the first time there was a big scandal. I think she fucked Ringo Starr from the Rolling Stones, and it was a big scandal. And Trudeau had to go publicly, Trudeau's daddy obviously, go publicly and denounce and everything, and then get back together with her. And then what does she go and do? She goes and fucks Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. She was literally the definition of a crack whore. She was the kind of girl that would go to orgy parties, do acid and shit, and just get drilled by everybody, probably including Castro, because let's be real, Justin Trudeau looks a lot more like Fidel Castro than he does Pierre Trudeau. And if you see the pictures where Trudeau's mommy and his daddy, so-called daddy, are with Castro, Pierre Trudeau's off to the side. Margaret Trudeau is literally all over Castro. If I was in a picture with another man and my wife was like that with the other man, that would be the end of my marriage right there. But for Trudeau, he's a cuck. We know it. His son is literally just smart enough to read the teleprompter. At least he can do that. Joe Biden can't even do that. And that's what they want. They want somebody that's stupid because they're easy to control. They want someone immoral, especially a child diddler, because then they're really easy to control. And the other thing that makes it great for them to be stupid is the plausible deniability, especially for Canadians. Because Canadians don't want to believe that Justin Trudeau is a cold, calculated, sinister, evil person trying to take down Canada. They're just going to say he's an idiot. It's so much easier to call him an idiot. And you don't want to get an idiot charged with treason, but you would if he's a cold, calculated person trying to bring down Canada, because that's literally the definition of treason. So
you think he is a cold, calculated person, you're saying, or you think he's just a dummy puppet?
His handlers, obviously, but his agenda that he's representing is cold and calculated. So that obviously makes him sinister, whether he's cold and sinister and cold for sure. Definitely not calculated, but because he's being controlled, I threw that in there, because we're not dealing with Trudeau. We're dealing with his handlers, which are the WEF and all these international organizations that are trying to kill our sovereignty and kill our freedom, kill our purchasing power, because that's the only way they can control us.
Yeah. And it's funny because these almost like trauma victims, which Trudeau clearly is a trauma victim, right?
I just realized we got my Twitter at the bottom wrong.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Oh, no way. I copied
and pasted. I'm going to fix that one for you guys.
Here, you want to send it again and I could repaste it in there?
Yeah, I just noticed that. I spelled my own name wrong.
Okay, how do I did you send it again?
That's how long it's been since I've written my own name.
Wow.
I forgot the Chris and the S in Chris, because it should have been 2 S's there. Chris Saccoccia. And by the way, Saccoccia means pocket in Italian.
All right. Did that hang on? Let me see here. Did that fix it right there? Hang on, it's coming on.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. We're fixing things on the fly here. So let's talk about masculinity. I mean, it's obvious.
Oh my God, I can't. I'm so happy you mentioned that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's very obvious that the world powers, they love these beta males. I mean, they want to put and this goes essentially for a long time. It's not just like Trudeau, Joe Biden, these weakened individuals. Let's talk about what's happening with masculinity and the attack by globalists on masculinity.
Well, first of all, let's say this. Men are essential to society because they do like all the physical work. They can pretend in movies and political correctness that girls do things. They always put like girl mechanics in movies, hot chick with her nice tank top with a little bit of grease on her face.
Yeah.
In reality, over 99% of the mechanics in the world today are males. But
by the way, could I pause for 1 sec? 99% of inventors too throughout history. By the way,
yes. Yeah. But they'll say that that's because women weren't allowed to invent. So you can't even use that as an example because they always have a comeback. But the mechanic thing is hilarious because if you watch movies, oh my god, it's like half the mechanics in the world got to be hot chicks. Meanwhile, in reality, it's not even 1 out of 100. So and then how many workplace deaths are males? Once again, 99 out of 100 workplace deaths are males. So you need men in society. But what's the problem with men? Men have testosterone. Men like to be leaders. Men are hard to control. You'd love to have a society full of women because women are easy to control, but they won't do that physical labor. So what's the best of both worlds? Having men that act like females. So the attack on masculinity started well before I was born. So by the time I was born in 83, we had a lot of beta males, but we still have quite a few alphas in my generation and actually manly men. Now you go 10 years past us, 10, 15 years past us, and you have these little soy boy vegans, and they're offended by everything, and they hang out with girls that have arms and legs that are triple the size of theirs, which is never before seen in human history. And you're like, what the hell's going on with men? Then you fast forward another 10 years, and now you have boys that don't know if they're a boy, a girl, or a cat. That's how far gone we are. So, and now there's such an attack on masculinity that not only are they going to call people like me toxic and misogynistic, in fact, they're going to try to pass, and remember I said this, ladies and gentlemen, you know how they pass hate crime legislation for the LGBT community? Yeah. They're going to try to pass new hate crime legislation against men for women under the guise of toxic masculinity or anti-misogyny laws. In fact, they already tried. And why do they want to do this? Because men are already so friggin' intimidated and pussified by society that the average male, if he sees a woman he's interested in, if he finds her attractive for whatever reason, he will be absolutely too terrified to even go and say hi to her. He doesn't want to be yelled at. He doesn't want to be called a stalker, a creep, this and that. They want to take that to the next level and make it so if you do an unwanted advance on a female, she can actually have you arrested and charged with a hate crime because she felt unsafe with your unwanted sexual advances. So they want to get it to the point where guys are so beta that they will literally be terrified of every woman they meet. And then imagine you put a woman in power. Imagine what man is going to be able to question that woman, especially a straight white male. You can't. In fact, they already tried to pass these laws way back in August, and they tried in the UK, and it failed miserably. So they never made it public. I had to dig this up. But then guess what happened? Enter Andrew Tate, and he became the most popular man on the planet. And then what did they start saying? His message is damaging the youth. We have to do things to protect from the toxic masculinity and anti-misogyny views. So now he's becoming the reason in the UK that MPs are talking about anti-misogyny and anti-toxic masculinity laws.
By the way, could I mention
the books that they tried to pass?
By the way, if I could mention, we just did an episode about Andrew Tate. The two things I highly recommend is for you to check out, for the viewer to check out that episode. And also Paul Joseph Watson did an episode where he talked about essentially the whole Andrew Tate thing is based on lies. There's like no evidence. The women that were supposedly the accusers actually came out and said that he's the sweetest guy, saved my life. I was a refugee, gave me a job, never felt trapped by him. And they won't even change the charges. Even though these women have come forth and said it's all BS, take my name off this thing, they won't take it out because once they do that, there's no case. And it's really about holding him in. It's about holding him indefinitely and destroying his influence. And it was done by the UK and the USA in particular.
I
Like
agree
they're the
with
ones.
most of that assessment, except I think the entire thing's an intelligence operation because they want
Mm,
people like me and other masculine men to see what happened to Andrew and take it as an example that they can do that to any one of us. And they're going
yeah.
to use this whole situation to try to revitalize those laws. But how is he tweeting every day from jail? Who's
Yeah.
handling his tweets and all this stuff? He keeps getting press time. He keeps getting interviews. I don't understand how all that. I've been arrested. Let's be honest. I've been arrested 25 times in the last 27 months in 3 different
Wow.
countries. I never
Wow.
had access to a Twitter. In fact, they treat me like I'm friggin' Hannibal Lecter when I get arrested because I won't wear a mask, I won't take a test, and I'm not jabbed. So they isolate me and they put me in solitary confinement for over 23 hours a day every time I get arrested.
Yeah.
And I've been charged with over 60 offenses, but I've
Let,
never been able to tweet from jail. I've never
yeah.
gotten to have an interview from jail. So I don't understand what's going on over there. And the whole
that
thing stinks to high heaven.
that is crazy. It is crazy. But let's talk a little bit about like all the crap that they put you through. 27 times you're arrested. You had 250,000 followers on Twitter, which was just erased. Give
No,
us a
250,000
litany.
was on Instagram. I was
Instagram.
verified at 250,000 on Instagram. I was getting like 20,000 people a day at that time. So then they
Wow.
killed it and they actually deleted the account totally so you can never get it back and then gave it to an imposter account. So if I tried to make the name again, the name was already taken. And they made it national news and they made it seem like it was the best thing in the world that I got censored. So they literally used me as an example to try to eliminate free speech in Canada and got people to cheer it on. My Twitter had 110,000 and it was eliminated. And then I begged for Elon Musk to bring it back. I called him out on a bunch of different channels, etc. Had people message him. I had done over 10 appeals to get the account back. And then somehow finally it just came back. And I put a video out about the carbon allowance, and it got 3 million views in a few days. So I ended up getting like 40,000 followers just in the last few days. So I'm up to I think I'm at like 150,000 now on Twitter, and it's the only place I'm not completely censored. Even my Telegram's completely censored. You can't get on my Telegram if you download it from Google or Apple. You have to download it from telegram.org. And if I try to make a TikTok, I can use your phone and try to make a TikTok. It won't allow me. If you try to put the hashtag Chris Sky on TikTok, it won't work. Try it. The whole hashtags disappear as soon as you write hashtag Chris Sky. If you try to put the words Chris Sky in a video description, it won't let you post it, and it will say contains banned words. So why the hell is China censoring the hell out of me on their social media platform? It's because China is the model for all of the rest of Western society, and they don't want people to know that. And they also don't want my videos going around China talking about just say no and united non-compliance, because if 1.4 billion Chinese people rise up against their government's fucked. Straight up.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, America Happens, that URL on the bottom, which is we're part of the America Happens network, banned, blacklisted by Google. Facebook won't even let you put the URL anymore. Like in Twitter, I think until recently, they wouldn't let us use the URL. It just changed a few days ago. But Google literally blacklisted us. Why did they blacklist us? Because we do interviews like this, and long time ago. Huh?
Of course. You post me on YouTube, but if this is a 45-minute interview, within 15 minutes, it'll be taken down. Your channel will probably be gone.
Yeah. Rumble's been good to us, and hopefully they stay that way. Man, you were talking when we first started this interview, your activism, and we'll have this in your bio on the bottom. I mean, it pretty much goes all across various spectrums. You were part of the Freedom Trucker movement. You were just telling me recently, just yesterday, you were going after some porn in schools. Tell me about that.
Oh my goodness. So everybody knows that the LGBT agenda is attacking children. And no, that does not mean I'm anti-LGBT. My wife is bisexual, and we actually have a girlfriend. So I'm not against that at all. That's been my lifestyle for over 10 years, and I'm perfectly happy with it. And if you're a gay man and you want to have one boyfriend or 100 boyfriends, I don't give a shit. All the power to you. I wouldn't want it, but if that's what you want, go right ahead. My problem comes if your boyfriend's 12 years old, and the same applies if you're a man who has a 12-year-old girlfriend. We have
could I mention something here, by the way, because I'm from California. I grew up in Hollywood, and I just got to be straight up with this. We used to do this thing called the Malibu Farmers Market, which is a really cool farmers market right on the beach in Malibu, right? And on many occasions, I've literally seen it. I don't know why it was always like this, but elderly men in their 60s and their 15-year-old Asian boy toys. a lot. And I'm talking about, at least, when I say a lot, at least half a dozen instances. And I'd be like, what the hell? And it's always wealthy Malibu, types.
Well, yeah,
What
you
is,
live in Petalwood. Hollywood is Petalwood. The whole
yeah.
Hollywood industry is based on child trafficking, child torture, child raping, et cetera, even organ harvesting. It's all part of that. And actually, a lot of those guys that you talk about, they like to go to places like the Philippines, because over there they can do that with a 12-year-old boy, and it's legal.
Yeah.
Over there, the age of consent is 12. So a 40-year-old man or a 60-year-old man can have sex with a 12-year-old boy or girl, and it's perfectly legal. And in fact, they're so poor over there, families will literally sell their kids off for maybe $100 American. So that's very, very popular. They call it sex tourism for those people. But what did I uncover? Well, in Canada, there's a massive, massive, massive attack on our children under the guise of LGBT and trans education. It's called SOGI, SOGI. It has a thing in there called PRISM. They bring in this little thing called the gingerbread man that teaches children as young as 4 years old that there's really like 75 genders and always increasing. And then they bring in these wonderful books into the schools that when I exposed, they try to pretend aren't there. And one book, in fact, is so graphic and disgusting. It's called Gender Queer. And it's about a same-sex relationship between two young boys. We're talking like 13-year-old boys. And it has images and sexting in the book of these boys performing oral sex on each other. Wow. And when I asked the schools why they would have this in their thing, they tried saying it's as a teaching reference for the teachers to use. And so I asked them, when would you need to teach a 4 to 12-year-old about the merits of same-sex oral sex for prepubescent boys? And they couldn't answer that question. So then when I made this public and I went after a specific school in so-called conservative Alberta, Fort McMurray, we found out there's a corrupt mayor there by the name of Sandy Bowman. I actually got him on screenshots trying to call me for calling him out and saying that they shouldn't have this curriculum and how they're treating the parents. I have screenshots of him calling me, and I quote, a homophobic Nazi, and then denying that the book that I claim is in the school. Meanwhile, we have newspaper articles talking directly about this book in the school board and how they voted as early as, I think it was October or November 2022, to make sure this book stays in the school libraries. So we have documentation that proves that it's there. I had parents send it to me. I had verification from the school originally itself that it was there. And now they're denying that it was there. So Sandy Bowman, how did they get him to do this? He's supposed to be this big, tough guy, 7th degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, runs a mixed martial arts gym in Fort McMurray. Well, they caught him publishing some insensitive memes that were insensitive to the LGBT community. So to prove what an ally he was, they made him make a post denouncing his bad ways, holding a giant rainbow flag, and of course, putting this LGBT curriculum targeting youth into 4 schools in Fort McMurray. That was the deal he made. And those 4 schools were K.A. Clark Elementary School, 4-year-olds, 2 separate high schools, and 1 college. And then I dug deeper and found out that this all came from a minister of education by the name of Adriana Lagrange, supposedly of the United Conservative Caucus. She is the one that is pushing these so-called SOGI pilot programs on all these conservative and rural neighborhoods, literally slipping them in under the rug without telling parents what's going on. And you know what's even worse? I just found a press release from the Fort McMurray Public School Board, who actually sent a letter directly to Adriana Lagrange stating unequivocally that they did not want this new sex education curriculum because it was not in the best interest of the students. Meanwhile, Adriana Lagrange said, screw you. We don't care what's best for the students. We're doing what's best for the agenda. So they put it in the school, despite the school board not wanting it, despite the parents not wanting it. And now that the parents don't want it there, they won't even let the parents in the school. When the parents went to go drop their kids off at school, since I broke this story, and multiple parents will confirm this, they now have security and volunteers backed by the security that come and get your child from the car and bring it into the school. They will not allow any parents in the school because they have this LGBT garbage all over the school walls, all over the lockers. They won't allow any of the parents into the library to see the books that they're showing to their children, and they won't allow the parents to see the curriculum.
These people are Nazis, man. These people are crimes against humanity. These people literally are treason against a nation, man. This is so repulsive. So
and they're doing it through the
child
children,
abusers.
which makes it way worse.
Child abusers, man. These people are they are the true Nazis, and I actually think they're worse than Nazis, because you know what? The Nazis didn't destroy at least they had a certain level of, however twisted it was, loyalty to their population, loyalty to their homeland. And yes, they, killed Jews and all that, which is absolutely repugnant, but these guys are trying to kill everyone. They're trying to destroy everyone. They don't care, Jew, Muslim, Christian, whatever. They just want to destroy all the children. So to me, these are worse than Nazis.
Well, you know why they're going after the children? I can give you the exact reasons. Number one, we already know they want to do the breakdown of the family unit, because if you break down the family unit, you get these individuals that are a lot easier to control.
They want Justin Trudeau prototypes. They want like literally people that have been shocked and awed in life, so they end up like betas like Justin Trudeau. That's what. Want, I think.
Because what are their goals? They want less population, right? So what happens when you make a child LGBT? Congratulations, your son's gay. Which means he's not going to have children. Which means or how many millions of years is now taken out of the friggin' gene pool.
Sorry to interrupt you. Or what they're going to do is forcefully adopt. This is a totally different episode, totally different topic. The corruption of the family law industry and CPS. Well, they'll literally steal children from healthy parents and give them to gay couples, forced adoption. It's been happening. Literally, numbers are skyrocketing. And I know way too many stories of CPS literally inventing lies to kidnap
children, and then get abused, and even worse in some cases.
Exactly.
But the reasons they love it is you're like, that's a whole episode just on the CPS and the foster care system, which is absolutely important. But they like it because it helps them reduce the population, because you get kids that aren't going to have babies. It gives them compliant people. How many LGBT members of the community are jabbed and wore the mask? Far more than the average. Why? Because when you're a member of the LGBT or trans community, you're a special protected minority. So the government gives you special status, special rights, special privileges. Are you going to not trust this government that's literally your best friend? So they'll do everything the government says. So they have compliance from these people. They have the fact that these people won't reproduce. And then here's the big one. Big Pharma did a study. The average LGBT or trans person spends over $1.5 million more over their lifetime than the average person on Big Pharma, because they're so into the Big Pharma. So what does that mean? That means for every 1 million 4-year-old children you churn into an LGBT or transgender member, you've just created $1 trillion over the next lifetime. And that's for each million. And what have we seen? In 2008, how many gender clinics were there in the entire North America? Something like 2 or 3. Now there's hundreds. And you know how much hormone blockers cost? You know how much gender reassignment surgery costs? But guess what? It gets paid for by our tax dollars. Your transgender reassignment surgery, they're going to charge you $250,000 for. You won't pay $1, and we'll pay it because it's an essential surgery. It's definitely not a cosmetic surgery, taking off your penis. No, that's not cosmetic at all. Wow. Getting a nose job is cosmetic. Taking your penis off, that's not cosmetic. It's essential.
Yeah, insane. Chris, this has been amazing. We have, as you know, we have a hard out here. So I wanted to thank you for coming on Blood Money. And man, I'd really like to have you back. There's actually an episode that I think I want to do an expose with you that I don't think that's going to take a whole episode. And I'd love to have you back on as soon as you're available.
No problem, brother. I just want to let people know, February 18th, we're having the worldwide rallies all around. But the one I'm going to be at is the Worldwide Rally in Toronto. My first time there in a really long time. We're expecting a massive turnout. I can't even imagine how many people are going to be there. And it's for one reason, to reunite Ontario and to show people the way of united noncompliance. to these new measures, which are now part of the UN agenda in this post-COVID era. Thank you so much, brother.
So make sure you check out americahappens.com for our latest episodes. We're posting episodes on a daily basis. Check out our latest episodes, share, like, and follow. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next episode of Blood Money.